reliability is flawed. We also point out that the survey undertaken by Micromex of about 600 residents in October is biased in the extent that it says both pools are at the end of their operational life. It figures from a professional pool builder states that the Scully pool will be brought up to working condition for $481,000 and roughly the city pool for about $150,000. We've requested a copy of the dilapidation report prepared by council engineers, but at this stage it has not been supplied to us. The Mayor has conceded on a local radio interview with the ABC that there has not been regular maintenance done on the pools for quite some time. The All Voice survey was invalid to a certain extent in that you could go and fill it out any number of times. There were 4,522 responses, of which 770 duplicates were removed, but that does not make the survey valid. And it is unclear that the survey results are truly representative of the community, given that it did not ask questions about Indigenous and ethnic and other disadvantaged groups. The report states that the renewal of the pools would cost between $15 to $20 million, yet the Gunnedah pool is just upgraded with a heated swimming pool for a cost of $12 million, including refurbishments of the change rooms, etc. The business case itself says that 75% of users will be within 5 kilometres of the centre, and that means the other 25% will come from outside that 5 kilometres of circle. What happens to them? We believe that a substantial proportion of the population will have reduced access to pools as a result of its non-central location and increasing central accessible entry costs. Where are the statistics on the schools who use the pools and how they access them? Where are the statistics on the recreational users and what their needs are? Where is the strategy to encourage physical activity and address access for the greater population? Why did the council pass the motion to sell the pools before consulting the community? The new Aquatic Centre will run at a loss, estimated at $1.2 million. The current pool generates a loss for both pools of $630,000 and could be improved with better management. The TRC has limited ability to finance this proposal and may have to sell additional assets, increase rates, or obtain substantial grant funds to fund the building of the
Mr. Marr, could you bring the presentation to a close, please?
The assessment is flawed and the needs of 600 sporting users have given minimal consideration to the needs of the 41,000 residents.
Thank you, Mr. Marr.
We ask the TRC to make a proper assessment of the whole community needs and rescind your motion to sell the Tamworth and study pools. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Councillors, the next speaker registered this evening is Mr. David McKinnon. Mr. McKinnon, if you could state your name, please, and maybe just to speak to...
David McKinnon, representative of the Tamworth Ratepayers Association, who are incredibly in favour of a new pool. We chronically need a new pool. After 50 years, we need a pool badly. The population has doubled, and the Ratepayers Association is right in there fighting for a new pool. Now, that doesn't mean that you automatically have to shed other pools. We've done a costing through a valuer that the council is likely to get something like $3 million or plus for the 2 pools. Now, what's that going to do to $61 million that currently is going to be outstanding for the new pool? It has to be realised that if we stick to facts, I've got some facts here, and one of them is that our planning for this council was always in these words: all people should have fair access to the services, resources and opportunities to improve their quality of life. Now, that's not going to happen if there's one pool out in the paddock between here and Kingswood. If you're going to do something like that proposed, at least put it in the middle of town. There's enough room in Viaduct Park. There's no reason it couldn't go in one side of the viaduct itself. But if you just go on figures that are part of this town, you've got 30% of this town lives below $500. Now that means if they're paying for a significant distance travel and also paying for an entry fee, they're not going to. Well, on top of that, we have some of the most obese people in this state, in this country, because this is from the statistics. And in obesity, you have some 39% of obesity in this town, as opposed to the national average, which is 28. Now, if the children cannot swim and do not have access to swimming, I believe that you're putting them on a path to greater obesity. So if we go also onto the internet, because that's the only way we've been seeking responses, do you realise a fifth of this town is not even connected to the internet? Now, if you're not connected to the internet, how can you possibly respond to the council's surveys? It's not going to happen. So you have, again, as I say, 10% of the town is Indigenous. Now, if you knew the numbers of the people that use the Memorial Scully Park, and it is a memorial, let's remember that, and it was put together by citizens, not by the council. The council voted against that pool, and the citizens got together and went ahead. So we believe the ratepayers will do the same. They'll go ahead and they'll campaign right to the end, no matter what happens here tonight, because it's a social justice issue that has to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. And councillors, the next speaker this evening is Mrs. Tracy Shoemaker. Mrs. Shoemaker, again, if you could state your name, please, and the matter you wish to speak to.
Dr. Tracy Shoemaker, speaking to item 7.1, the draft business plan. I work as a health researcher. When I announced 2 years ago that I was leaving my main campus to come back to the town that I was brought up in, I was reassured with a very big grimace that at least I would have a lot of work to do because I work in heart disease and this is where it is centred in Australia. Unfortunately, that has turned out to be only too true. So we have a health problem in this and there are many factors that are playing into why this is the case and why we're at the top of the list for Australia. It's going to take us a long time to tease out all of these problems and put some effective strategies in place. But given that this is affecting a large percentage of our population, we can't rule out that environment's not one of them. I too support a new pool. What I don't support is the current business plan. I gave the business case the same attention that I give any other business proposal that I review that is asking for more than $1 million. And to be honest, I don't believe that what is documented is commensurate with the amount of money that is being asked for. There are a number of areas that were very well addressed in the proposal, but there was also a striking number of omissions and glossovers that could have been addressed a lot more clearly. For instance, page 25, proposed users. No indication of where those users came from, how they were contacted in any way, and what their usage statistics actually were. Were they contacted in any way? Were any of the current users questioned in any way? Were any of the people who used to use the pool and no longer do so asked in any way? Is this pool also to provide an essential service for this town? Because if that's the case, there are many things that are missing from this business plan. My concerns are that there are going to be a number of unintended negative consequences because a lot of homework hasn't been done in the areas of access and equity. Those areas were addressed, but they certainly weren't given the same amount of time and effort that some of the better proposals were. So there's a lot more work to be done there. My message tonight is please do not make a decision based on the information that you have because some of it is missing. You cannot make a decision based on only half the information. We do not know what the unintended consequences of the current proposal will actually be. So I guess take-home message, can you please do a little bit more homework to make sure that the proposal that you actually put together is going to give us all really good heart health, because I, for one, I don't want to die here.
Thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Next speaker, councillors, is Ms. Libby McGann. And once again, Ms. McGann, if you can state your name and the matter you wish to speak to.
My name is Libby McGann and I'm speaking to 7.1 proposed Aquatic Centre. Mayor Murray and councillors, I'm addressing you today as a Tamworth community member Secretary of Tamworth Water Polo, most importantly a mother of 2 boys. I've represented both Tamworth swimming clubs, New South Wales country in Australia and internationally as a water polo player, and I understand the value of swimming on many levels, from fun and recreation as a competitive sport, and importantly as an avenue to teach swimming as a life skill. I've had the opportunity throughout my sporting career to train and participate with a number of facilities similar to that proposed for Tamworth, and appreciate the community benefit that a fit-for-purpose Aquatic Centre provides that extends from learn to swim in preschool, swim classes, recreational swimming and water polo competitions, and importantly to support the elderly community and people who require hydrotherapy and supportive injury management. Tamworth has a proud tradition and rich history of growing Australian level swimmers and Olympic water polo players, but our culture is best expressed by the number of Australians who swim for fun and fitness. And with our growing and ageing population, a new facility will provide the opportunity for more Tamworthians to participate in swimming all year round. As a parent, it is frustrating to have to suspend our swimming activities through winter. Water confidence in young swimmers declines and the cost of lessons is wasted. What they have learnt, they're not able to continue through the winter months. Having a pool open through winter would increase children's water confidence, not only through lessons, but in splash zones and children's pools designed to have fun in the water. Letting them play regularly in water to build confidence and to educate children on the principles and practices of water safety. As a parent, talking to teachers at my son's school, more than half of year 2 children competing in their intensive swimming lessons can't swim. That's 8 and 9-year-old children, and that statistic we should not be proud of. I know there are community members with views about losing our current pools because of their proximity to local schools, which allow them to walk to the pool for swimming lessons. However, if letting go of these pools means we have the opportunity to provide a year-round swimming, learn to swim program, we believe will provide far-reaching benefit to the school and the broader community rather than 2 facilities that are only open for half a year. Essentially, a new facility will provide greater community benefit and access to aquatic services and help address the health problems of our residents, as it is Western Tamworth holds the highest rate of overweight and obesity in Australia. I know how important this year-round facility is going forward for the Tamworth community and for our next generations coming through. 30 years ago, my father, as Secretary of Scully Pub, and with Chris Durden, who was president at the time, they were fundraising then for a year-round Aquatic Centre. And 30 years later, I'm here as Secretary of Tamworth Water Polo doing the same for my children. A significant portion of money has already been invested in consultation and planning. 61 million is the most cost-effective a complex like this will ever be. Upgrading the existing facilities is not considered an option, as the completion of any capital improvement will come at a significant cost, as it will be required to address all of the compliance requirements for disability access, traffic and parking, building compliance, and to meet the technical guidelines of the Royal Lifesaving Society.
Ms McGann, can you bring your presentation to a close, please?
It's not considered appropriate when we consider a future of Tamworth population approaching 100,000. Upgrading the existing facilities will not provide a year-round facility. Finally, it's time to move on from facilities that have provided and supported our community in the past. It's time to look forward and provide Tamworth and the broader North West District with a fit-for-purpose aquatic facility that is accessible and inclusive of all our community. A facility that provides swimming programs for the youngest, supports the old and the disabled, and allied health services, hydrotherapy and lifestyle programs. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And Councillor, the next speaker is Mr. Grant Sim. And Mr. Sim, once again, if you can state your name and whether you wish to speak to.
Grant Sim, 1 on the business case, please. Councillor Cole Murray, Mayor, his fellow councillors, council staff, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grant Sim. I'm speaking tonight as Chair of the Tamworth Aquatic Group, the President of Tamworth City Swimming Club. In May last year, I stood before you all urging Council to endorse a proposal to invest $250,000 to further investigate and research the possibility of building a world-class aquatic facility here at Tamworth. It was a big project, no question. But it was time for the community and its elected representatives to determine once and for all if Tamworth was to move forward. To Council's credit, it was agreed it was time. Time to test the market with over 30 years of debate. Council commenced the consultation process, an external, fair, comprehensive, neutral and robust process. It took longer than we had anticipated, but we realised it was a necessary requirement. The results of this consultation has demonstrated overwhelming support. The support has come not only from the sector that I'm involved in, but also from Tamworth mums and dads, school leaders, business owners and health representatives who see this development as a huge asset for our city. Over 80% support this project. No question there's been some ongoing debate around this project for many years, going, as Lee said, well back over 30 years. Today, this council, which is representing our community, has a unique opportunity to create a lasting legacy by approving this key piece of nationally significant infrastructure in regional Australia. The social and economic benefits are wide-ranging and will benefit the entire community. I believe the residents of Tamworth now, and more importantly, generations of residents to come, will benefit from a facility built now to serve the next 50 to 80 years, allowing for growth not only in our city but in our region. Much has been said about the proposed location. I consider that this is the best location due to the surrounding infrastructure and the sports which would be beneficial and complement each other during large events. It will also offer parents another sport in this location to help reduce the many trips along Gunnaganoo. Council correctly decided to move many sports out to this location to use larger, more modern sporting facilities, and this has resulted in an increase in participation numbers across the board and has allowed the creation of new sports in town due to these new facilities. Councils in the past have had to make the hard decisions around large pieces of infrastructure. They've had to decide whether to go ahead with these projects. Trek, ALEC and the Sports Dome come to mind. These were facilities that needed to be built and that are being used by today by a number of stakeholders that I'm sure weren't considered during the planning stages. The proposed aquatic facility will also fit into this category. As I'm sure you've all heard the famous quote, "Build it and they will come." In closing, I'd like to congratulate Council and the community for supporting this initiative, and would like to urge all the councillors present to support it also. I look forward to the next stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And councillors, the final community member this evening is Mr. Guy Hebblewhite. If you could come to the microphone, Mr. Hebblewhite, state your name and the matter you wish to speak to for the record. Thank you.
Guy Hebblewhite, item 7.1. Mr. Mayor, councillors, council staff, ladies and gentlemen. Rule option 1, let's get it done. My name is Guy Hebblewhite. I'm the Vice President of 360 Scully Swim Club. I also sit on the committee of TAG, or the Tamworth Aquatic Group. I'm the father of three swimmers. I was going to say that our executive are away in Sydney, but they are actually here tonight. They were in Sydney, away with the kids at the New South Wales Swimming Championships at the Sydney Aquatic Centre. We are hoping that this event that they were attending will be held in Tamworth in a few years' time at our new Tamworth Regional Aquatic Centre, bringing with it people to spend money on food, motels and other items. The three things I would like to talk to you about tonight is on the design, the location and the cost of the proposed new aquatic centre. We would like to congratulate the Tamworth Regional Council staff and the consultants they employed to consult on the new aquatic centre design. Option 1 caters for the competitive swimming community for today and well into the future, which will allow Tamworth to become the home to swimming in regional New South Wales. Option 1 will allow Tamworth to host local, regional, state and national swimming events. When those major events are held, the local swimmers, families and the general public will not be inconvenienced as they are now. The 360 Scully Swim Club is in agreement with the Council that the Sporting Centre of Excellence is an ideal location for the new aquatic centre. All the sports that have moved to the Sporting Centre of Excellence have seen an increase in participation rate for their respective sports. We expect the same for the new aquatic centre. There has been a lot of discussions about the cost. If you compare the cost of building Scully Pool 50 years ago, it is expensive. If you compare the cost of building a new aquatic centre in 10 years' time, the cost is cheap. Tamworth Regional Council needs to sell the 2 old pools to fund their 1/3 contribution to the new aquatic centre. A regional aquatic centre is going to be built somewhere in New South Wales, and we want it to be built in Tamworth. As a business owner, I understand repairs and maintenance and finding the funds to do. If the Tamworth Regional Council is to repair the existing pools, they will have to find the funds out of the general funds account. Gunnedah Council added 2 lanes, as was mentioned before, to their existing pool, which has cost them $12 million, as Stephen said. After spending all this money, they still have a 60-year-old pool with high running costs. With the funds from the sale of the Scully pool, the Tamworth City pool, and the value of the land for the new aquatic centre, plus another 12 to 14 million from council, we then get a $60 million asset for the whole community, thanks to the additional contributions from the state and federal governments. The 360 Scully Swim Club executive and members encourage all councillors to please vote yes to option 1
Mr. White, to bring your presentation
for the future of our region, our kids and the generations to come. Option 1, let's get it done.
As we all know, we already have a structural deficit of about 1.6 million. In other words, our operational revenues, we have a shortfall of about 1.6 mil against our operational expenses. The report suggests a tripartite funding arrangement. That's a nice way of saying that we'll need to borrow about $22 million. Loans on that will be approximately 1.6 million per annum, and with the increased operational deficit from the new facility of 1.2 million versus currently about 750,000, we're looking at a bit over an additional $2 million deficit every year. So we're now up to 3.6. We can't sustain that, so we need to examine that to see how we can get that down. To some other matters, I do believe we also need to have a closer look at the issue around disturbance to ALEC. In particular, when you look at the scaled plan for the development, you can see that the adventure park bit of it, which I think is a fantastic facility to have, but it's almost a bit like a grandstand looking out over our new outdoor arena that we've just spent $1.3 million with the new ebb and flow, and it's the envy of Australia. So we need to be absolutely certain that we're not creating a disturbance issue there when particularly the show jumping and the dressage and all that stuff. And I know we haven't done any acoustic work or anything, so I think we just need to have a good look at that. A lot of talk on City Pool, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much there tonight. My own personal view on City Pool is that it should not be sold. If it is, when it does close, whenever that time may be, it should be converted to green space. I think for future generations, that's an important issue. Accessibility, Mr. Mayor, is an issue, but I think there are ways to overcome that. And my other mention, very quickly, Mr. Mayor, I've only got about a minute and a half left, is competitive neutrality. We'll need to be very careful with our pricing structure, with the significant subsidies that'll be in there and grant fundings. We're going to have to be very mindful of our pricing structures there, so we don't create any competitive neutrality issues for us. But in summary, Mr. Mayor, after everyone has a chat, I'll either move an amendment, or if you're happy to take an amended motion, I just want to sort of reorder that thing to make sure that we are doing a process where we have due diligence for our assessment of the business plan and our ability to fund it, all with a positive mind, because I'm for it, but I want to make sure we get it right so that we can afford it, and just as importantly, we've got to make sure that we produce a better cost-benefit ratio than the one we've got now. Otherwise, Mr. Mayor, we're not going to get the funding, and then there's no winners. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Betts.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been on the table since the amalgamation, from my perspective, in 2004. And as some of our speakers said, for 30 years, and I've certainly watched the progress. And yeah, it's been a very hard slog, and I know that we've had a number of workshops to review possible avenues to explore the new facility. I have noticed that there's been a few negative comments in regard to consultation, but boy, it's about as much consultation as I think I've seen in my career in local government. It's been extensive, and I'm very comfortable that we've got to a majority of the people. We can't get to all, I know that, but it's certainly the people that have spoken to me. I would have spoken to hundreds of people in regards to it, and I was getting about the same feedback as I got from the council's survey and the community surveys. I'm certainly in support of it, Mr Mayor, because I think, as some of the speakers have said, reiterated what I really believe, that we have matured as a community to require a facility that will take us into the next 50 to 60 years. It's, I know, with a bit of trepidation that we sort of have to look at selling off those other facilities, but we actually have 6 facilities as it is, pools across our council area, and no other council in our category has got anywhere near the next one's 3. So it's a shame, but we have to look at reducing those facilities, and to upgrade each of those facilities. It would cost in the order of $15 to $20 million. And as the speakers have said, and all the research, that Gunnedah have spent $12 million on a couple of lanes. If we spent $15 to $20 million on each of these facilities, we'd only get a refurbishment of a 60-year-old, 50 to 60-year-old pool in greater than the Tamworth pool's case, and you haven't got an undercover facility. You've sort of only status quo that really we've got. So what we need to do is move forward, be bold, move out to the Sporting Centre of Excellence, because we need to look at accessibility out there. And I know people say there's no transport, whatever, out there to accommodate this. But now, if the facility goes out there, we've got hockey, we've got netball, we've got basketball, we've got the equine industry, we've got ALEC that has shows, we've got the Tamworth show out there. The list goes on and on. So the need for public transport to move into that area as this facility is being built, to give access to the broader community, because people from Hills Plains, Oxley Vale, they've still got to travel. So we need to make sure that they can all get there. Now, the other aspect is, for health reasons, we're upgrading the bicycle tracks around town, the connectivity, and I think we need to continue that. That in turn of itself brings a health benefit. I know one of our speakers said that we need to look after the heart. Well, that can be all-encompassing as well. We need to make sure that we get plenty of access so that people can actually bicycle and walk to the facility in a recreational manner as well. This is really only the first business case. We need to now progress to the next phase. We really need to go and fine-tune the business model to make sure that we can afford it in a sensible, ongoing manner. And a bit like the Bicentennial Park, we've got one heck of a lot of bagging over that, but you build it and they'll come, and that's the way I feel with this Mr Mayor, so I'm totally in support of it.
Thank you. Further discussion. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, there are things that are not in doubt at all with this project. One is that Tamworth needs a new facility, and at a place like Tamworth needs year-round swimming, and that a place that gets as hot as we do in summer, we need a facility that really is enticing for people to come. The other thing about which there's no doubt is there'll be no agreement. There'll be absolutely no agreement in this, and we might mention a few years, but I've seen this come and go for about 20 or 30 years, where projects to develop new swimming facilities have got almost to the line, and there's not been agreement, and there's not been courage to go ahead. And I think everybody around this table is determined that we're not going to balk either. We're actually going to make this happen. The other thing about which there's been no doubt is that the communication and the collaboration and the consultation that's happened has been excellent, and I've got absolute confidence in the figures, the way it's been done, the integrity that's been used, and I'd like to congratulate those who have done it. When you look at the users of the new facility, I jotted down a few. There's swimmers, rec swimmers, trainers, gym trainers, counsellors, ratepayers, schools and polo clubs, and there is no way in the world each of those groups are going to have the same needs. So what we're all going to have to do is to compromise. and I know I'm going to have to compromise. As a kid, I pedalled 3 or 4 k's every afternoon to swim at the town pool, and you could swim there till 9 o'clock at night in those days. And one thing I learned as a councillor is you have to vote against yourself at times, and that actually came as quite a shock to me. And it'll be with great reluctance that I will agree to sell the city pool in particular. But it's no longer a suitable site. The parking's not suitable. The facility's old. It was built the same year as the town hall, and we need to move on. Scully Park is closed in with so many facilities around it. And so what we're going to have to do as councillors and as communities and as communities with interest is to be prepared to compromise and to move on. And I must admit, in the business plan, there's one thing I won't compromise on, and that's a council-run gym in the facility. I think Tamworth is well serviced with gyms, and it's not our business to go out in competition against local businesses. So I certainly won't compromise on that, but that'll come later, Mr Mayor. So could I just encourage the town, the users and the community and the councillors to get behind this and make it happen.
Thank you. Further discussion, councillors? Councillor Edby? Yes.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, there's absolutely no question that Tamworth not only needs a facility of this kind, but also deserves a facility of this kind. With a hydrotherapy, splash play area, slides and pools for all year-round use. But as we all know in this chamber, I tend to come up with some slightly different ideas from time to time. And I think there are a few positive unknowns that we can enjoy considering and thinking about over the next little while as we continue to grow a business model and business plan. We don't really know how many visitors will visit a piece of infrastructure like this because we don't have one yet. We don't know how many visitors we'll have. We don't know how many visitors will attract to this particular facility into our region from outside of the region. There may be new businesses coming to Tamworth that might lease spaces within a facility. Public health, the hospital, for instance, might be, or area health services, might be looking for a new space. A university presence, and we all know how I feel about a university presence and the opportunities that a science and health sciences facility and training facility in this town would improve opportunities for young students and mature age people looking to further their career. Or even private practice, and the issue of the gym has been mentioned. I think the market should determine what is in that space, whether it be a gym, some other private practice, maybe even a dance academy, who knows. But what we do know is that we have an opportunity to create a piece of infrastructure in our region that doesn't exist now, but should exist in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years time, and well into our future as our community grows towards 80-odd thousand over the next 16 to 20 odd years.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Tickle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with all the comments that my fellow councillors have made, and in particular we have been discussing this for a long time, 30 years that I can recall. We are a major regional centre, and as such we need a facility like the one proposed. It will open up many, many more benefits to our whole community and also for the entire New England and North West. Some of the speakers against this spoke of inaccessibility for lower socio-economic people. I think the opportunities actually will be increased. There are a number of volunteer groups within our community that work with such groups, with an all-year-round facility that can be accessed in the winter time, as one of the speakers said, which will increase learn to swim opportunities. There's going to be far more opportunity, far more times that the facility can be used than we have present, right through winter, for example. We have a number of wonderful sporting facilities, and this will just add to them. Particular interest in the report is the accessibility for those without disabilities, and in that I include the aged. It will be a facility that will cater for that sector and for allied health, as well as our users that we see at present. agree with Councillor Inglis. We need to strengthen up the business case for this so that state and federal governments will not be able to refuse, maybe 50-50. They have an obligation to fund a project such as this. We are a major regional centre. We do service the New England and North West, and as such, this would certainly meet all the criteria for government to fund it. They have been promising for 2 to 3 years to get money rolling into the region. Regional growth we want. We want to support the regions. We want to support country areas. Perfect opportunity leading into an election for the federal and state government to provide the funding for this. Not just a little bit, but to come up with the whole lot. And I'm sure, as Councillor Inglis said, we can strengthen up the business case to support that. This is a wonderful opportunity for further growth. And as we've said, build it and they'll come. Look at the opportunity down here in the regional playground and the splash pool. It's free. So people that are doing it tough, what a wonderful opportunity for them to come and access water and fun and activities for nothing. We've got a lot of facilities that we heavily subsidise to provide opportunities. And this was going to be the jewel of the New England and North West, just as we have the other facilities such as the Aquatic Centre and the Sports Dome. They're proving that they're attracting more competitions and it will be of national significance. So I think we need to keep the momentum going. And as for the consultation, I personally had given a lot of people hard copies. They didn't all absolutely have to go onto the internet to do it. So I'm satisfied that the consultation process was very thorough and an opportunity for anybody who happened to read or listen to radio or television to have access to that opportunity to complete the survey. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in getting the project this far.
Thank you. Any further debate, councillors? Councillor Roddo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am, from the outset, I'd like to say that I am supportive of a new aquatic centre, and I understand the concerns of the residents in relation to the existing 2 facilities. And you know, for decades I've seen people walk to those facilities, and I understand now the limitations of those facilities in relation to sports like water polo. And we want, and of course, you know, the competitive swimmers, and I understand the needs and the concerns of recreational swimmers as well. For moving forward, we need those water polo kids and competitive swimmers. We need a facility that is 365 days a year. It cannot possibly service them into the future, having a facility that's potentially overcrowded, a private facility, and those 2 pools which are obviously in a state of decline and demise. But I am mindful of you know, some of the concerns raised by people in community consultation, which included access and the equity issue, being able to afford entry to a new facility. It would be a big concern to a lot of people. It's I guess another added cost of living pressure to people that can probably ill afford that expense. Transport, and I'm sure that this is not the end of the process tonight. I realise it's potentially just another, you know, starting spot for a future facility. But I am mindful that we should address the transport issues out to that facility. You know, I play hockey there in winter. It's not too far, but I don't live too far from that area either. But I can understand the concern of someone that lives potentially at Oxley Vale or Westdale wanting to access a facility like that. And then, of course, there are the schools that currently walk to the current facilities. You know, obviously then there's the transport issues of getting them out to a new facility. I would like us along the way to be as inclusive as possible with all stakeholders, whether you be just the intermittent user of a facility like that, or
ongoing, everyday user of a facility like that. I want us to be inclusive of all of that and be mindful that we do have health issues in this region, and that's I guess, you know, having a 365-day facility will probably address some of those health concerns, but we need to be mindful. We need to get them there too. In relation to the issues of the costs, the costing of you know, getting a business plan up to scratch to be able to afford that facility, it is a concern that we cannot encumber the ratepayers with increased rates to meet a potential cost or fee blowout because we didn't do our homework. And I'm very supportive of what Councillor Inglis said in that regard. In regard to what Councillor Wilson said in relation to the gymnasium, I agree with her 100%. I don't see why we should be competing with a dozen or more gym facilities that are already established in Tamworth. I think that should be something that could come out and should probably potentially come out. It should be part of the calculations for making a facility, an aquatic facility, get the tick and the green light, because we shouldn't be, as a council, competing against established businesses, and there's plenty of them already in town. So I agree with Councillor Wilson 100%, and that should come out. But overall, I am supportive of the proposal. I realise that it's long overdue. I realise that there's plenty of people in this town that want a new facility, and that we've got issues, real issues with our current facilities. And I think that, you know, this is not the end, this is the start of the process, and I'd like to see us, you know, progress it so we can see where we're going.
Thank you. Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. On a somewhat sad note, we've been talking about this for, I guess someone said tonight, 30 years. I was going to say probably 20, 25 years. And had the council today, 25 years ago, made a decision to move forward, we wouldn't be having this debate tonight. But in saying that, they face the same struggle that we've faced, and that is trying to get something that would satisfy the needs of all of the people, or most of the people, for most of the time, and get the greater good for the greater city. I think on a positive side of that, it has been a long time, and if we look around, I guess, New South Wales, and we look around the nation, we see most regional centres of our size and some smaller have got regional, aquatic and leisure centres. They've built them. Yeah, some of them probably aren't as flash as what we're thinking about, but we're looking into the future. We're looking for the next 50 years. Tamworth will be an activation zone. It is an activation zone. It is seen by the state and federal government as an area that needs to grow, needs to support a greater population over the next 10, 15, 20 years. Needs to be a place where everything is happening. It needs to be an area or a region where, I guess, employment growth is going to be high on the agenda. Jobs are going to be high on the agenda, and of course GDP is going to be high on the agenda. So for a regional centre like ours, we've got to really think outside the square a little bit here and build something well and truly big enough to cater for the future. We're talking about that here, and I think that's very, very important. I think the cost-benefit analysis is something that we've got to actually sit down probably after we've spoken tonight and approve what we might approve tonight and get that right, because we will need state and federal government funding to help us get this over the line. We as an organisation, as a region, cannot afford to do this on our own, and without state and federal government funding, what we're planning and talking about won't actually happen. I think that listening to some of the speakers tonight, there are some issues out there. I'm sure that we can work through some of those issues. I'm sure we can work with the sectors of the community that have transport issues, as some of the other councillors have spoken about. I'm sure that we can work with sectors of the community that feel that that the other two pools should stay open. Can I just talk about that for a minute, Mr Mayor? We cannot afford to have 3 pools in a city like this. We need to have an aquatic centre and a leisure centre, a good one that caters for the needs of the whole of the city and whole of this area. The other pools, we can't afford to have them running concurrently. I agree with what was said tonight by one of the other councillors. the Tamworth City Pool, we will have to do something with that site. I think that should be probably maintained as a council asset for future generations. What we do with that into the future is something that we can decide in the future. I don't believe we can actually sell that site and try and gain some cash out of that to support this proposal. I think there's other ways to support this proposal. I do believe that there will be a way forward, and if we don't find a way forward, then I'll be disappointed. I'll be disappointed for the future generations that are coming, because they do need what we're talking about here tonight. They do need to have these facilities to make this place a livable city, or keep this place the livable city that we're heading towards. We are a livable city now in the minds of many, but if we're going to move forward and do what needs to be done, then we need to talk about supporting this tonight. And I would like to see the recommendation rejigged, and I know Councillor Inglis has probably got an amendment he'd like to move, and I will be supporting that amendment as well. But really, Mr Mayor, I haven't got much more to say. I think everything's been said. Tamworth's a growing centre. It's a great place to live. Let's make it a greater place, and let's get on with what needs to be done to support the growth of this region. And of course, in making these decisions, yeah, they're hard decisions, but we'll have to make a decision on this.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think most of what I've been thinking has been said, but just a couple of points. I think it's inconceivable for a city the size of Tamworth not to have an aquatic centre, so I'll be in support of that. I certainly won't support the sale of the side of the city pool. I think that should be green space or something like that to blend in with what we've got already in Bicentennial Park. The funding really concerns me, and like the other speakers, if we can't get government support, it won't happen, I'm sure of that. So, other than that, I think that's all I've got to say, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, we have a recommendation in the business paper. Is that what we're prepared to talk to? Councillor Inglis? Yeah.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I foreshadowed an amendment earlier. We could do it as an amended motion if the mover and seconder were in agreement, but let's get it up there so everyone can see it first. I've written the words out. Essentially what the amended motion or the amendment, whatever you are comfortable with, Mr Mayor, is to ensure that it continues the path we're on, endorses the design and the place, but from a due diligence process perspective, it ensures that we do more homework and do more work on the funding strategies and the financing arrangements for council, and get that benefit cost ratio up. And as some councillors have already stated, there are elements in the operational plan or the operating model within it that I think we can change, and I think will give us a better BCR. For example, the leasing out rather than the staffing of gyms and those sorts of things. So, in other words, Mr Mayor, we've got a bit more homework to do. I think there's a clear intent on our goal, and it's in our interest, of course, to get that BCF up, because otherwise we're not going to get the required government funding. And I've also just included the further investigations of any potential disturbance issues with ALEC. They can just look at that from an acoustic perspective and make some suggestions about if anything needs to be done there.
I'll second that amendment.
Okay, so
it's not there yet, Mr Mayor. I'd be just
we have an amendment moved by Councillor Inglis and seconded by Councillor Webb. That is the full extent of the amendment, Councillor Inglis?
Yes, Mr Mayor. In relation to the report, we received a note the draft business case, because as Councillor has said tonight, there's a couple of things we want to revisit to try and get those costs down. Subject to further investigations with ALEC, we commit to the forward planning for Regional Aquatic Centre facility as per the concept design of the high embellishment model detailed in the draft business plan, which everyone's on board for. Commit to the location of the facility to be built as a further stage of the Northern Inland Centre of Sporting Excellence, and we conduct councillor workshops in early 2019 to consider funding strategies and finalisation of the business case for the development of a funding prospectus in preparation for external funding applications.
Thank you, Councillor Inglis. Do we have any discussion on that amendment? Councillor Betts?
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. As mover of the first motion, I said that it's just an embellishment of that original motion, which doesn't change the context in any way, shape or form. But look, all the councillors around the room have sort of basically said that it's a facility that we're going to move forward for the second phase of the investigation. And a lot of the issues that have been addressed tonight and raised will be looked at in depth in the next business case. And those issues will certainly, I think, as Councillor Webb said, a lot of those issues will be able to be ironed out. And just finally, Mr Mayor, the city pool, totally agree that it should be there for the community in the future, and perhaps green space is the best option. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councillor Wilson?
Just briefly, Mr Mayor, I endorse that. I think the ALEC section really is just one of the details that'll come up, as with transport and costs, all those other things. They're details. What happens to the other two sites are details, but this essentially says we're moving forward, and as of tonight we're on track, and I'll support that.
Thank you. Councillor Otto?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I would like the movement centre to consider dot point 5. We seem to be of the opinion that the old city pool site should not be included. It is a reserve for public recreation, I believe. It's community land, and I think that we should acknowledge that and perhaps add it as a dot point 5.
Councillor Otto, I'd probably argue that should be considered in any business case. However, Councillor Inglis, do you?
Mr Mayor, well, as the moving issue, well, as you know, that's exactly the outcome that I'm looking for as well. But in view of the General Manager might want to comment, we've got some previous minutes, and that might require a slightly different process on how we deal with that. So it might be safer just to leave it alone, in the knowledge that I think everyone's really on board with it anyway, but whether the GM wants to comment.
Through Mr Mayor, Councillor Inglis is exactly right. You have a resolution.
We're looking at a rescission motion.
A previous resolution that talks about the sale of the facilities. I think the change in that recommendation, or the adopted position of council, needs to be supported by the business case. And of course, if we workshop it, that will be one of the business cases presented to the council. So you can consider all of the options, the sale and the non-sale, and what impact that has on the overall business case, rather than making a decision that's not supported by a business case tonight.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? If not, we're dealing with the amendment here. I'll now put that amendment. Those in favour of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Those against? The amendment is carried. The amendment now becomes a motion. I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion?
Aye.
Those against the motion? The motion is carried. To those members of the community who would like to vacate the chamber, you may do so if you wish. You'd be most welcome to stay and partake in the rest of the meeting. We'll be here for quite some time, but feel free to go if you wish.
And we won't take it personally.
Not because I gave 2 of the supporting letters for the sign. the